Hi everyone, it's Neve here and welcome to my art journal channel. Today we're going to be looking at texture and crackle to create this vintage girl inspired by Kelly Rae Roberts. I suggest you have a look at her artwork on Instagram. She's been around for years and years and her artwork's just stunning. So I'm starting off with just putting down some collage medium and putting down a whole heap of different text papers that I've had in my stash for ages. There's some encyclopedia papers, some old German vintage books. That piece of scrapbook paper is actually a scrapbook paper that I created for Stamp It when it was running, which is all chopped up bits of vintage photos. I've still got a stash of it which I love using, but I'm using it very sparingly because I'm getting down to my last few pages. So I'm just sealing over the top with some matte medium again, or collage medium, sorry, and spreading over the top some vintage brass paste from Prima, from I think it's the Finnabair collection, and using some golden paints and some Tattered Angels glimmer mists as well, or glimmer glaze, sorry. So what I wanted to do is have a really transparent glazed acrylic background on this piece rather than using straight acrylics over the top. I wanted bits and pieces of the background to peep through and keep that transparency, just to build up those layers. So I knew I was going to have a figure painted over the top, so the middle section I wasn't being too particular about because I knew I was going to paint over that. So just in the background adding some text stamps. This one's one of my favourites and I can't remember the company it's from. I think it's just a quote from a poem. And it's just in a beautiful swirly font. And the lovely thing about stamping it over the top was because the background was still slightly wet, it lifted some of the paint off as well, so you still got this more translucent effect. So using a Stabilo oil pencil, I just sketched out a rough figure, and I'm just going in with the Jane Davenport Portrait Light set to paint the flesh tones on. Again, just putting down a background colour, not worrying about shading at this stage. And then I used her turquoise paint from her, I think it's the Jane's Favourite set, to paint in the dress. I'm using the Burnt Umber from Dina Wakley to paint in some of the hair. It's actually a beautiful brown colour. It's an almost browny, grey, blacky colour. It's very hard to describe, but it's a very useful colour to have. So going back in with the Stabilo pen to add, or pencil to add some detail. Now this is a water activated or water soluble pencil, and it's the most amazing pencil I've ever come across. Dina Wakley uses it a lot and calls it a magic pencil. I just thought it was a water soluble pencil and didn't really think much of it until I actually got one in my hot sticky hands. It draws so smoothly. You know, just the lightest touch will leave a line, and as soon as you add water to it, it just floods with that black colour, which you can tone down really easily, but you can also really amp up, and it's a great way to shade an image. So over the top, I've had this in my stash for ages. I used to use it all the time. It's the Distress Crackle Glaze in Rock Candy. And it comes with a little brush in the pack and you just load it on. And I actually put it on quite thickly and left it to dry. Now, I am not a patient person. I would like to have hit it with a heat gun, but I waited, which is what you're watching now. It will speed up in a moment. If you leave it to dry, it actually crackles probably more finely. If you hit it with a heat gun, it does crackle, but it has a thicker crackle. So I added, while it was still wet, some of the Tim Holtz Small Chat words to it. Underneath the image, you can see a cloudy spot, which is where I actually hit it with a heat gun, and it went a bit cloudy because I had applied it so thickly and I hadn't been patient. Where you can see the brown in the crackles, I applied a vintage glaze, which I came from a gold foil kit that I had. I have no idea what it is where I got it from, but it's just a really nice brown that goes nicely into crackle. So it's just something I've got sitting in the bottom of my pan somewhere. Here you can see me fighting with drawing a face and drawing the open eyes. I quite liked what I'd originally done, but it just wasn't quite working. The proportions of it, I'd drawn them in the wrong place, and that's the beauty of having that water-soluble pencil, because I was able to wipe it off, particularly over acrylic paint. Because when it is dry, it is a form of plastic, you can wipe stuff off up to a point without it staining underneath too much. And I decided just to cheat in the end and go with a closed eye, which was a lot easier to do. So now I'm going in with the Jane Davenport mermaid markers over the top of the acrylic paint, just to get some highlights and to add in that shading. The good thing about the mermaid markers is, while they go on and you can sort of see where your shading is, they do dull down, they get soaked into the paint. So you do get those layers of colour being built up, and you can be as heavy-handed with it as you want. Because it is water reactive as well, you can, if you make a mistake, sort of sop it up a little bit, which is good. Now I'm going in with the food ball pen just to add a little bit of extra definition to the face and to the features. It's quite a thick pen. It's a 1.5mm pen. For some people it's a bit thick to draw with. I don't mind it. It's beautiful for writing and doing sort of that scribbly writing. In most cases, probably for this page, it might have been a little bit thick, but because I already had the Stabilo pencil there in the background, I wasn't too concerned about it. Once I've drawn my figure, I wasn't quite happy with how the background was working, so I've gone back with some more glazes. That purple was a sort of a shimmery purple again from Tattered Angels. And then I decided to go in with white. I don't know why I did that, to be honest, because it just dulled down the background. So I've gone back over it with the brass texture paste from Finnabair from Prima, just to add a little bit of more sparkle. Now in this fine liner bottle, I've made up a concoction of flow medium and some golden brass, I think, paint again, and a little bit of gold texture paint. Shook it all up together so it's quite liquid, and I can use it like a liquid highlighter or a pen. It does dry with a little bit of texture, but you can get, because it is quite fluid, you can get beautiful lines with it, and it's a great way to make your own paint pens. And I know on Jane Davenport's blog site she's got a blog post or a video on how to make her own paint markers, so go see that if you're interested in doing that. So now I'm just trimming up my page with the extras. I've done a little bit more stamping in the background because I'd lost that original stamping that I did, just to add in again some texture into the back. And while I liked what I had, it was still not quite looking finished, so I wanted to add a little bit extra. So I got these, again, really old rub-ons. They're from Hamley's screen print press from years and years ago. They must be at least 11 years old, and I learned very quickly that rub-ons that have been sitting in your stash for 11 years are not going to work very well. So I had to scrape it off using my craft knife, and I decided that she needed wings instead. So I got some of the German scrap from Paper Artsy, and I stuck those down. They come as together, so you can stick them in back of photos. I just snipped them apart, so I've got the two wings. And then I decided to use a little metallic chime that I had from Tim Holtz, and it reads, "I want to be improbable and afraid of nothing, as if I had wings." So I thought that tied in quite nicely with the figure and giving her wings. I'm just using some glue dots to glue that down on my page, and that is holding really nicely in my journal. And just got a little bit of scrap of ribbon to glue it on. So that's my vintage girl with crackle and texture paste and everything else. I hope you enjoyed watching this video and you can apply some of the techniques to your own artwork. Please subscribe to my channel if you're interested in seeing more videos like this. Thanks for watching.